Hello, my name is DW Mault. I'm cineaste, filmmaker. I'm here this afternoon with Ming Wong, who has a piece in the 2012 Biennial called Making Chinatown, or After Chinatown, is it?
There are three parts to it.
Oh, it's 3 parts, okay.
There's Making Chinatown, and then there's After Chinatown, and then there is a third component called The Chinese Detective.
Which we talked about this the other day, but that's a weird link to Liverpool because, you know...
Because I met David Yip.
Yeah, David Yip, and he's from Liverpool.
He's
and
the son of
played the Chinese
Liverpool.
detective.
Oh, yes.
So let's get the banal, boring questions out the way first. You know that you're probably sick of being asked why Chinatown. I think it's quite obvious why, but you know, tell us why and why you decided to do it.
All right. Well, I made Making Chinatown in January this year in Los Angeles. So the first project, Making Chinatown, was specifically for Los Angeles gallery, an institution called REDCAT, and it was in response to the context of LA and the city of filmmaking, and I decided that Chinatown was a good vehicle because it's a film about Los Angeles. It's a classic textbook film that you know that is taught in film schools, and so I played on the main roles. And in scenes I selected where there are references to Chinatown or about the Chinaman, and because I'm doing the talking, it creates a different spin on things. It adds another layer to that. And then the Liverpool Biennial wanted to commission a new work, and so at the time I was researching into the actual Chinatowns in Los Angeles and San Francisco, and then I also looked at the ones in Liverpool, because it's the oldest Chinatown in Europe. Just like in San Francisco, it's the oldest Chinatown in the US, both being port cities. They were the first port of call for Asian immigrants, and there was a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment and a lot of discriminatory laws around after the Second World War, trying to reduce or restrict the numbers of immigrants from China. And this was a time when film noir was happening, and so this entered into the cinematic vocabulary and into our collective conscious and it's influenced how we look at Chinatown as a symbol of menace, and I wanted to kind of relook at that.
And so this is the first time all three of them have been shown.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a little premiere because it's the Biennial.
Yes.
Commission one of the works.
Yes. It's got, like I said, it's got three parts to it. So the new work is, well, there's Making Chinatown, the neo-noir, and then I made a new work which is going back to the original source of inspiration for Chinatown, which is the 30s, 40s film noir, right? That has this Orientalist setting. So that's black and white in the 4:3 format, and it's me as a detective in a femme fatale crossing through these spaces of a so-called Chinatown, which was shot on location in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Hong Kong. All three are cinematic cities. And then there's a third part to the exhibition, which is a room full of movie posters and stills and publicity photographs and other sorts of ephemera relating to the history of either the Chinese detective or the use of kind of Asianized, exoticized setting for movies or in the casting. And a lot of that provided the references and influences for the new work.
So what next?
What next?
Big question.
What's next? Actually, there are several things. I'm going to do an exhibition in Japan, actually, in Tokyo, and so I'm going to start looking at Japanese cinema more closely, and also traditional theater in Japan. And I'm very keen to look at the lesser known pulp films. Like a lot of the big Japanese directors started off their careers doing this like B-grade movies, you know, like either like Yakuza films or like really exploitative, like soft porn films.
Yeah, well,
as well.
I saw a season of films at the National Film Theatre in London a couple of years ago of pink cinema. Do you know all the Japanese films that have like of graphic sex in them as well? They're very, very strange. Very hard to get help and see them.
Yes,
you know.
But some of them with a strange kind of like artistic twist to it and philosophical twist to it.
And so, I think we talked about. I think I bored you to death the other night when we were talking about cinema and filmmakers we liked and stuff like that. And you know, and I said, I said, you know, at one point are you looking to make a narrative, a cinematic narrative, you know, like in the cinema?
Yes, I asked myself that.
Yeah.
And if I do that, it will be also questioning the narrative of the narrative. You know, I guess if I do make a feature movie, it would be very self-referential, or looking at the framework around it, like what makes a movie a feature-length movie, and what, you know, how do we consume it? Because I'm an artist primarily, and I work for institutions and galleries, and not in a conventional cinematic space. But it's exactly what I like to explore, right? How we look at a movie. You know, what happens when you walk into a room, and it doesn't necessarily have to be one way of showing a work or experiencing a work. I think that's very interesting for me and for the future of cinema.
Well, you know, outside the Anglo-Saxon world, you know, there is a great history of filmmakers, artists, you know, crossing over, doing work that's released in the cinema, but also doing gallery installations and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You know, you think of like
there's a trend kind of in the recent years.
You know, Stephen Queen, obviously. You know,
you have Api Chakpon doing
that
too.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. You know, and
then there's also lots of artists who are now making feature movies for cinemas. Yeah. So like Shirin the Shah did that, and even what's his name, Tom Ford.
Yes, Single Man.
The designer, you know, is all making their feature films.
Well, because it started about late 90s. Some of the big New York-based art superstars started playing around in film. Like Robert Longo made Johnny Mnemonic, terrible film, Keanu Reeves, and then Larry Clark made his first film, predominantly as a photographer. And you
what's
know,
his name? Schnabel, Julian
Julian
Schnabel.
Schnabel he was the first person that was like, he kind of did it and did it really, really well. I think because he made a film, his debut film was Basquiat, because he had personal connections, right. He knew he was part of that whole scene. And like as you say now, it's, you know, I don't think people are hung up so much in the fine art world and the cinematic world, especially if you're working outside the prism of Anglo-Saxon cinema. So after Chinatown, what other? I think when I was talking to Laura before, she was saying that you really like Bergman.
I really like Bergman.
Yeah.
Sure, I like Bergman. I did a project on Bergman last year when I was in New York to do Performer, which is a biennial of art and performance. And I did my project in the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens, in New York, which was a dream because they had renovated the museum recently, and everything in there is white, not what you expect of a museum of cinema. Everything is pristine and white like a spaceship, with large glass windows, and immediately I thought about persona, you know, and how formally it kind of reminds me of that, and so I use that as a source material for this kind of I don't even know what to call it. It was a live performance. There were installations. There was a promenade piece where we herded the audience around the architecture of the building. Basically, it was 20 25 actors, each representing a frame of a moving image strip. And they move through the architecture of the museums, in effect turning the museum of the moving image into a camera, right? And each performer became a moving, living film frame.
Wow, that sounds
And
fantastic.
we had a parade of film frames going in a circular loop around the architecture. That's a representation of a physical representation of the mechanics of cinema, classical cinema. And the images and the kind of gestures were all taken from persona, which is itself a monument to cinema.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really, really is. What about contemporary filmmakers? Who are you interested in?
Contemporary filmmakers. Let's see. Oh, this is a tough one.
This is a tough one.
It is a tough one. I like a lot of dead directors.
They're directors.
I liked national cinema when there was still something to talk of. When you talk about national cinema.
What about, let's talk a little about Liverpool and the city. This is your first time in Liverpool?
I came to Liverpool for the first time this year. Yeah. Yeah.
And so how do you find it?
Well, when I was researching for my project, I did look at the films of. Who can help me?
Terence Davis?
That's it, Terence Davis. Because I did see Distant Voices, Still Lives in London many years ago, and it still leaves I remember it so vividly. I really liked that film, and then I started watching his other films since the documentary.
Time in the City.
Time in the City, Liverpool. So I was I had some pre-knowledge of the city, but coming here, what really struck me was the Saturday night parade of party goers.
Very social city. People say when they come here for the first time, it's an amazing. Like you go on a Tuesday night, and people are still out having a great time, even though they got work the next day.
Yeah.
People love to party.
I love how the girls dress up.
Yeah.
With coloured hair and capes and platforms and.
But that's kind of cool that you saw some Terence Davis.
I'm surprised it's not used more for film locations.
No, it is. It's outside of London. It's the most shot city.
Really?
Yes. All period dramas shoot here because of our architecture, like the Neo-Georgian and Edwardian.
Yeah.
And so they shoot the massive big films like Sherlock Holmes was shot here.
Oh, really?
And stuff like that, to like TV period dramas. They shoot in Liverpool all the time.
Great.
And so lots of people do shoot here. Like in recent years they've had like a big portion of Captain America was shot in Liverpool.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. But is it usually masquerading as another city, or is it Liverpool as Liverpool?
Both. A lot of the times, especially the period stuff, they would pretend to be London or stuff like that.
That's what I would think. Yeah.
But and like obviously in Captain America, Liverpool's not in it, so they just shot here. The thing is, it's because we went out the other night after Cave and we talked so much. It was like. I've kind of had cool conversations with you anyway, and so it's kind of like I don't want to repeat and we could bore.
We have to repeat it for the benefit of the audience.
Yeah, this is true.
And also, I don't
remember?
recall much from our.
Really, we were bonding. We were bonding about our love of formalist cinema. Pedro Costa,
oh my God.
Pitcher Pong, Star Palais, and so. Oh, one thing I want to mention before, because we've talked about quite high art and high culture. One of the things that I first, and don't be offended, please, when I say this, it reminded me, like, kind of the idea of, like, the Michel Gondry movie, Be Kind, Rewind.
Oh, yes.
When, the idea of Sweden films.
Yes.
Of, like,
yes.
And I was like, oh, that's a really interesting.
I love that.
Oh, do you?
I love the word Sweden, isn't it?
Is where you remake a film.
Yeah.
And have to do like Ghostbusters.
And then there's another thing called memeing. Memeing?
Yeah. Yeah.
where you add a different soundtrack to it.
Oh yeah, well that's become everything from that scene in Downfall, isn't
Yeah.
it, with Hitler?
Yeah.
And people just
Yeah.
like change the context or whatever.
Yeah. And
that's-
everyone's becomes a filmmaker in a way.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? You know, like as we're getting filmed here on 2 cameras.
Yeah.
You know, one's a little phone. You know, so
Exactly.
and the idea anyone, you know, can go out. You know, most adverts and music videos now are shot on Canon 5D, 7D.
Easy.
You know,
And it will get
you
easier.
can get a good camera for £1,000. There's a great film coming out called Side by Side, which is about a documentary, bizarrely directed by Keanu Reeves, but it's about the change from film to digital. There's loads of great DPs like Walter Murch, Ed Lachman, and there's a great interview with Lars von Trier where he says, you know, we're going to get rid of this idea that filmmaking's hard. You just press the button. Anyone can make a film. You know what I mean?
Yes. And that's just the making. And
Yeah.
it's also going to change the way we consume films and how we access films.
Because I remember Coppola, this was Coppola's dream when he said, you know, the next Orson Welles is going to be a 12-year-old girl in the American suburbs with a video camera.
Yes.
Because he was the first person to integrate video assist when you'd have to look at rushes all the time.
Yes.
And the world took like 20 years to catch up with him, but Coppola, like a lot of things, was so ahead of his time with his love of digital.
But it's still about to change even more now.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't need actors anymore. It's all going to be. It's all in post-production.
Yeah. Well, you know, I loved your work. I've loved meeting you, drinking, talking.
Thanks for taking me to the magnet.
No problem.
Yeah?
That's a wrap. We're done.